Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Building a Successful Instagram Account from Amilia and Full Out Cheer Gym Branding. Hope everybody is having an excellent week so far. We're coming to you live from the Amilia home offices in formerly sunny but now rainy Montreal. So if you're checking in from our wonderful location here in the 514, hope you're staying dry. And elsewhere in Canada, everybody who is checking in, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Matt. I am the content specialist here at Amilia. Very, very happy to be hosting this webinar today. I've been with the company for just about 6 months or so, generating a lot of really helpful content for all of our clients, everybody out there who's curious about how our online software solution can help take your cheer club to the next level. And yes, I didn't get the memo on picture day. That is me with a white shirt in front of a white background. I am forever known at this office as the person who has a floating head in their picture. But that's a story for another time. A little bit about Amilia. We are a software company here to help you de-stress and optimize your day-to-day with your cheer gym. We're talking about online registration, management for basically anything you do with your business. So you can focus on what really matters, engaging with your clients and giving them an unforgettable experience. We're all about helping you grow while also growing with your needs and your specific wants over time. Very, very excited to be introducing our special guest for the webinar today. But first, before we get there, I want to just let everybody know that this webinar is going to be recorded. We are recording this live as we speak. There will be an email that you should receive early-ish next week with the full version. So make sure you're looking at your inboxes for that. If you want to have another look over material, to listen over the material, and also to share it with anybody who wasn't able to join us right here, right now. We are also going to be taking your questions, so make sure you enter them via text on the right side of the screen, and we'll be looking at those towards the end of the webinar. And also, if you're interested in how Amilia can help your organization specifically and you'd like to get things rolling with the free trial, we're also going to tell you how you can find out about that later on in the webinar. Okay, now on to introducing my special guest today, Maria Fearnall. She is the founder of Full Out Cheer Gym Branding, a social media superstar, here to teach us about Instagram, its inner workings, and how you can make it work for you. Maria, thanks for joining us today.
Amazing. Thank you for a great intro. Yeah, my name is Maria. I have been running my own business called Full Out for 5 years this year, which is an amazing accomplishment. As well, on the side, I also coach competitive cheerleading at Cheer Sport Sharks, and I've been there for 8 years now. Within my business, I've been able to grow a social platform, understanding how we can utilize social media and marketing better in our sport, and I've now worked successfully with over 170 gyms around the world. So thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to just a little bit of different perks and advice for Instagram and your accounts. I'm hoping out of our webinar that you can learn at least one new thing and utilize it properly within your business profile, and you find that you're learning a lot today. So yeah.
Well, we got a lot of great information to pass your way. Before we get into the points on that first page, so I want to just let everybody know how big Instagram is getting in the world of social media. So just to give everybody listening an idea, 71% of US businesses are now on Instagram. The numbers are a little bit smaller, but very similar in Canada. There are 8 million Instagram business profiles out there alone, and the company is set to hit almost $7 billion in ad revenue in 2018, or that's what it's forecasted. So a giant, giant platform that you can do a lot of great things with. So Maria, let's dive right in, and let's start with the Instagram business page. Now, do you want to just quickly explain what the difference is between sort of the business and the personal page and how you can go about changing it?
Absolutely. So in your personal page, obviously it's for yourself or for a thing. And generally you just post photos of this, that, and the other. But Instagram has introduced a wonderful business side to having a profile, and you can change that real easily by just applying, and Instagram will change it. There's no fee, nothing to nothing to complicate it. But the difference being the value side is that there are analytics that the business page will have for you. And that is based on all the content you share in your feed and in your story, based on the days, the times, who's looking, when they're looking, how many people are engaged, and all those different analytics, which are so important when we're building a proper page and feed for your social media.
So in terms of, like you said, the business and it, just moving towards that, what are different things you can do with like the business profile versus just the personal one? Like, how are you limited without a business profile on Instagram?
Right. So in your business profile, you actually are able to have all your contact information, including a website on the business page. And you can actually do a couple different things. So in the business page, you can contact through it. So there are a couple options. So you can either press call or email or contact. And that would not happen on a personal page, because personal, again, is supposed to be more fun and heart-lighted. But because this is a business page and you want contact and you want engagement, there's opportunities for the viewers to actually get in touch in different ways instead of just searching a website on Google. So because this is such a more popular platform for younger kids and older kids and parents now, it's an easier way just to get in touch.
And do you feel like that sort of connectivity between, people being able to go on the Instagram profile and then just click right through to a website or to a phone number, have you seen huge jumps in terms of engagement, in terms of followers, in terms of, just overall brand strength on social media?
Yeah, so I think, as I've mentioned before, I do manage our Cheersport Sharks account as well. And I will say it's interesting to test out the different posts. So for instance, if you're posting something where it's an engaging and an activity, whether it's a camp or PD day camp, whatever, you can track those through the analytics and see how many actually get involved or touch your website. And the better part too, which you can do on personal, but obviously it's more valuable on a business page, is when you promote an ad or promote a post, you again are able to see from how many people are actually clicking your website. And I would say, based on in the last few months of testing that era, it's way bigger than what I had actually given it credit for. So I've seen at least 300 clicks to a website if a post has been shared and boosted for even a couple days. But again, it also depends on your own traffic on your website. But that being said, you're able to look at audience that may not even follow you yet. And that's part of the better side of a business profile, and that's how you grow as a business without really reaching out. So I do find the way of email and website is, if the more places you can have it, the stronger it is. And I think that's what the business profile allows. It's just a little bit extra.
What about Instagram handles, like the name of your account? What are some sort of do's and don'ts in terms of people who are looking to set up a business profile, maybe change the handle to better be found online by their audience, or existing accounts who feel like they're not getting enough traffic? What are some things they can do there?
Yeah, so I find Instagram is pretty good. When you search a name, it will pull up, if you put a full name, if I put Maria Fearnall, it will pull up the whole thing, right, the whole account. But that being said, I've always said the best strength, if you're going to have social media as a whole, and you have a Twitter account and an Instagram account and Snapchat, for some gyms are on Snapchat, if you can keep your handles the same, the better, because it's just consistent. The minute you start making it different and you have one over here that's just a couple letters and one for Snapchat that's the whole name, it does throw it off. And I would say as a marketing side of it, when you're posting something and saying, follow us on this and this, and you have to change what it looks like, in my mind, that doesn't look the most professional. So I do prefer that's consistent. Now, having something that's easier, I think, again, looking at your brand needs to stand out in your handle. So you can make it short form as long as that's something that you do as a business outside of social media. So people know that if I put full out on everything, then that's how it should stay. And for me, my handles are all the same. It's all _ full out. So I would rather it be the same for every business. And I've noticed that, I've picked that up on other bigger companies, and following and just seeing where everyone has the same thing. And I think consistency is key. I do think for handles on the other side, making them too long is also kind of, I would say it's a no-no. I think that the faster the better. And social media is such a fast platform that I don't want to be typing in the longest name of, this, and this with an underscore and another 2 words and 2 numbers. So I would say simple is best, and then consistency on top of that.
I have a feeling consistency is going to be a word we get back to on various points throughout this webinar. Quickly before we move on, client base, we haven't really touched on that yet in this sort of little intro to the webinar. And how important is it not only that your clients follow you back on social media, but also how important is it that certain cheer gyms, cheer clubs, and just businesses in general seek that out for themselves online?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Again, had we talked about this a few years ago, we could say Instagram's still young, but it's not anymore. And I find that when you are searching for your audience, I think as a gym, so we keep it a little bit more cheer gym specific, I would make sure as the gym itself, big following or not big following, I think what would be a value is making sure that you're following parents as well as your athletes, because both of them are your clients in your gym. And I think being able to touch base on that, there are a lot of parents that still have no insight on knowing that that would be a place to go look if I was looking for a class time. It may be posted on their social media. But again, if parents have a smaller view or smaller following, or they're not on it as much, just making that as an extra click and following them, I think also helps it grow. Because again, your kids are the core part of social to keep it fun, but your parents are the people that are signing up all your athletes for the activities and what is your business.
Yeah.
So I would say start with those 2 things. Aside from all of that as well, I think for any business, especially in cheerleading, because it's such a niche, it is important to be following the different companies within cheerleading. So whether that be shoe companies, uniform companies, all those different things that we have that's integrated in our sport is so specific. But I do think building your business on that alone, then you start tagging and you start being kind of interconnected with everyone else. And then you're starting to build a bigger clientele throughout your social media. But I think it's a matter of knowing where to start as a cheer gym. I think it can change here and there, but I do find too, for myself, when I look at myself as a cheerleading business compared to a cheerleading gym,
right,
obviously there's a few more factors to that. I'm looking at different companies that are within graphic design, so I want to follow them too. So I do think following other sports and following within your own industries in a wider spectrum is important to build your own clientele as well on social media or on Instagram, because you may learn a little bit more from other sports just by following them, and vice versa. And the truth is they'll generally follow you back. That is something that happens on the social platforms, that it is a community. And I do think when you start following those businesses and sports that you have in common with a little bit more, again, it starts to build a broader base for that. So, and you may even follow somebody that's from a different sport that has another child that may not be in something and then gets connected to cheerleading. So any way you can make those connections, I think, is the most important, and then everything should kind of hopefully spider web from there. But you do need to be active on it. You cannot sit and watch it grow. So it's just not how it works. So
no, in social media in general, it's all about consistency. It's all about continually engaging your audience, which is a perfect segue into our next slides, which is making a plan of action here. Right.
Yes.
And you said you can't just sit back and watch it grow, and then people are going to be like, well, how do I know what to do? What's the first step? What's the second step? And so on. So, can you make sort of smaller plans if people are sort of afraid of, trying to schedule everything for a long period of time?
Yeah, so I do think for anyone that's fairly new to Instagram, it can be very intimidating. It's a massive platform now, whereas when Instagram first started, it was very small. It was, you had 7 filters to choose from. It wasn't really used as a business tool. But now that it is, it's almost a bigger platform that people just don't, where do I start is the biggest question. So I do think starting with a smaller plan, and I would look at 1 week, and I would take 7 days of that 1 week and sort out exactly what you kind of want. And I do think as a coach, if this is something new for you, you should ask one of your older athletes. All of those kids are on Instagram way more than the average adult and know exactly what's new the minute it happens. And there's no fear in that. Go ask one of those athletes that knows and say, hey, I just want to pick your brain for 10 minutes. What would you like to see on Instagram? That's one way of kind of educating yourself, is talk to the youth. They're on their phones. They're doing all of this way more and way better than a lot of people are. So that's one way I would start your plan, by picking someone else's brain a little bit. I would also educate yourself. Go look at the different sports and industries that are posting all the time and see what's going to be of value for your gym. A gym that's very big may not be posting something that you need to be posting. So you may not have everything in common, but if there's consistent posts, if they're doing a testimonial, which is a very common one to do on a Tuesday, and getting all those different things as they float through the week, pick your battles and pick which ones you think would represent your gym the best. And then through those 7 days, obviously the target market for posting something successfully is in the afternoon after the kids are home from school and people are more interacting on their phones. But again, so through those 7 days, pick your battles, pick 7 different posts. And if that's too much, that's fine. Pick 5 and leave the weekend at B. But I would start with 2 easy things. And again, if you're gonna reach out to your coaches, a fun photo of 2 kids having a really good time at your program sells way more than something that says, sign up for these tumble camps with this, this, and this. It may not be something that they're looking for yet. But I would start with those things, have a little bit of education within your industry, education through other sports that are also successful on Instagram, and then talk to those that would be on Instagram and social media that know what they want to look at, and start with that as your big plan. And then from there, I would narrow it down.
Well, I think that's a really good sort of starting point for anybody who is, again, either starting on the platform, not as comfortable with it, sort of searching. And you said it perfectly. It's very easy now that Instagram is a big social media platform, as I said before, with nearly 7 billion in revenue forecasted for just ads alone. I mean, it's really easy to sort of, get lost in there, right?
Totally.
But then there's also the kind of like the science behind how much information you're putting out there, right? And we've got this slide, spread out the information. What exactly do you mean by that? And can you sort of be at this point where it overwhelms your audience, I guess?
Yeah, so I've definitely learned from trial and error on what speaks better to your audience. And again, going back to what we had first talked about, knowing your audience first. That's part of the education side of it. So that being said, spreading out your information, or spreading out your plan, rather, if we were sticking with that 5-day plan and spreading out, you do not want to have 7 posts within your week of selling, because it's overselling. Your gym and your platform on Instagram is visual, which is why it does so well, because people love visual. But if it doesn't catch my attention within the first 3 seconds of engaging, and I'm sliding up and looking through my whole feed through the day, it may get missed. So it's about making sure you spread out what we're doing. So if I'm selling something on a Monday, we don't repeat anything until, I would say, at least spread it out by 4 or 5 days, to be honest. And again, it does depend on how many following you have, because if you only have, let's say, 500 to 1,000, then your feed is not going to be that overwhelming. It's always going to be there, not consistently changing, which is okay, but making sure that it's not overselling something and spreading out the content. So I do like to see the cheerleading gyms in general, making sure that we're not just selling a product to parents, and we're not just selling lessons and camps to increase more revenue, but we are selling the whole sport.
Right.
And I believe, as a coach myself, I also want to see it that way, because I take pride in what we do and how we've built a sport in this whole country as what it is. But if people don't understand what cheerleading is, which can be very complicated and it's still new to a lot of people, then again, if they're going to come across your profile and they have no idea, why would I sign up for tumbling at cheerleading when I could sign up for tumbling at gymnastics? Then you've already lost them.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is building that brand a little bit, which includes those pictures of kids and includes a video of a stunt, whichever it can be of what's going on in your program, as well as selling something in between, gives people more, I also think it just gives them a bit of space, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to sign up for all of these things, because that's all they're posting about. You don't want to be overselling. That's not really the point of Instagram, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line where, you're posting a lot and you're engaging an audience, but then you can overshoot it. I kind of want to combine this question a little bit. I was going to ask it separately, but I think just where we left off on that last question, is there such a thing as too much posting maybe first half of the question, then second half, how can you use sort of the built-in business tools, analytics on Instagram or elsewhere online to sort of figure out where that happy medium is?
Yeah, so I would combine my answer. So if we just spoke about having a plan, and let's say that plan ends up being suffice. As you've changed your profile to a business profile after that week is done, I would strongly suggest going and looking at all the analytics from the last 7 days and take note. This is where you start educating yourself, as this is a business tool that's in your own hands. No one else is doing it for you. And understanding what part of that plan was successful and what part of that plan didn't do well at all. Did you post it at the right time? All those analytics are going to be a strength for you in understanding how to make your platform more accessible and more readable and more approachable. People want to go look at your posts and everything that you're putting up online. So I do think that that's part of it. The other part of over posting or under posting, I think it truly depends on what your client base is. I could speak on both accounts. So for my Full Out account, for example, I have about 5,000 followers. And I would say on average, I would post 1 to 2 times a day, and it's always in the evening. So it's spread it out within the evening. But a gym and program like a Sharks, or if you compared it to Cheer Athletics, which is also a really big account online, they have so many people following. And part of it too is that it's not just people within one time zone. So you are touching base, which again, is that really going to build your business of a kid? You might have a kid from Australia engaging, but it is helpful just to have.
Sure.
Right? That being said, I think when you have a bigger audience and we have constant posts going, I don't think it's over posting, as long as, again, it's not 4 posts in one day of selling the same thing or selling similar things. So I do like to mix it up with making sure I have help from the other coaches of, do we have a fun video? Is there a fun boomerang? Do I have a really good picture? Is there this, and this? And spreading out the content, because at the end of the day, that one kid who might be 10 on Instagram wants to see their friend doing tumbling, but their parents may be looking for something else. So I don't think that in itself is over posting, but I think once you reach the cap of more than 5, it's too much and we're losing the attention. And that's the biggest thing, any social platform, including Instagram, or especially Instagram, because of how visual it is. If you put way too much up all in one time, you're going to lose out on the actual benefit of selling or marketing something to your audience. And that's what we don't want to do.
Yeah. And I mean, as you said, with the visual, I think Instagram has the potential of overstaying its welcome a little bit quicker than something like a Twitter or a Facebook.
Absolutely.
Might, in the same way. So our next slide here is keep it fun. And, cheer gyms, cheer clubs, I think especially are very, very good at this. And you've seen just the attention that the industry has gotten from the sports world over the last few years. I don't think it's a coincidence, and it goes down to the local recreation level too, getting kids and their families excited. So what kind of content, what kind of posts can both kids and their parents be engaging with on Instagram? Yeah,
so I think a lot of different options can go about when you're using Instagram the right way. And as I had said before, it can be just a fun image, but I think part of it is interaction. And Instagram has gotten a lot better at allowing different interactions, especially with their different story options of having polls. And there's a new one now with the emoji slider. So you can say, like, how are you feeling about something? And there's a different style of a poll. But I do think understanding that the kids are looking at it because Instagram as a youth or as a junior, I would say 16 and under, is a fun spot, which is why Instagram has exploded in the younger aspect as well. I think them being able to see themselves or see their peers keeps it light and keeps it more fun. The amount of times that we will post a new skill for a kid, and we're celebrating whether it's a level 1 or a level 5, and we're celebrating that child as a program, everyone else gets to engage on it and comment and have fun with it. And I think the more successful side of Instagram is when you're allowing those kids to have those moments. So if we have kids that are commenting on things that are fun, like a new skill or a video or something, we've caught their attention for way longer than the average post of just looking at something. And that I think is important. The other thing too that I've noticed in stronger social media on Instagram as well is making sure when you're including the information underneath the image that it can be a lot of text. I don't believe that there is a limit on Instagram, to be honest with you. You don't need to write a novel, but if you lay it out in the right aspect too, you've again caught their attention to engage, and obviously they're paying attention. And one of my favorite things to do at the end of it is comment below if you're excited for a new season, double tap if you love this picture or whichever, because kids are going to read that and want to be involved. And I think that's the bigger part of what Instagram can seem so small can be bigger for your program and what you put on Instagram. If that's how fun that program looks on 7 squares that show up, then you've got to believe that that's exactly how the program is when you go. So I think in that aspect of just different ways to interact with your kids and different ways to interact with your coaches is just a really fun circle to keep going. And that has to come from help from the coaches as well, and making sure that everyone's kind of involved. I found that has been the biggest difference with working as a team instead of one person thinking of every idea. So that also makes it fun on the outside, kind of planning together and what would be really great. Like, let's showcase that team this week. That's fun for them, and parents love that. Parents love seeing that you're paying attention to every part of your program, not just the stars of the whole thing, right? So I think there is so many different ways, especially in cheerleading and as a program that's activities for kids, on how we can make those fun posts. And sometimes it's being able to interact with it, and sometimes it's just shining a light on somebody or a team or a skill. Yeah.
And like you said, it's really sort of getting the inside view with some of the coaches too, right?
Yeah.
And it would seem a little more personal, maybe a little less planned, rehearsed, whatever word you want to use. I want to get to Instagram stories. Maybe some people aren't as familiar with how to use them properly, and they really do up your engagements when used effectively on the app. So maybe talk a little bit about Instagram stories and how you've been able to use them successfully.
Totally. I personally love using the stories because you can repeat things on stories without overselling something, instead of having that same post in your feed that doesn't go away. And I find that if the story is used properly, it can be really, really strong. And further to that, if you are able to have different designs custom made for the story size, then that's something you as a program can keep repeating. But I do find with the different polls, you're asking all of the athletes to be involved, and you're asking for them to pay attention, versus if it was just a photo and people just start to click through and get rid of it. But that being said, I think the stories can also have a different way of a marketing feature that's just not the same as the feed. I think sometimes too, some people get excited and you end up, at least I personally, if you're looking through stories and you end up clicking through them and you miss something, you can go back and hold your finger down, and all of a sudden that person is paying attention to what that ad was. And I think that happens way more than what I had probably thought of prior. But to be honest, when we go and look at how many views we're getting on a story, especially even for, if I was comparing in different accounts, obviously my personal account is much smaller, but as a cheerleading account, we're getting thousands of kids and athletes and parents and whomever paying attention to that. And then it goes away. But you can also get analytics for all of those. And the best part, which is fairly new now, you can share that story from your Instagram and Facebook. So if your parents don't have Instagram, which I would say at this point is kind of a half and half depending on age, at least they're getting the exact same excitement on Facebook and can pay attention. And same thing, you can get analytics from that as well. And I think just having the double platform is a bonus, which again, you can share your posts from Instagram to Facebook easily, but those also get missed. So I think this is just another way to cover good bases. And I think the story part of it just makes it a little bit more fun. They've added fun face filters, all those different things. You can tag locations, which I really like. I think all of those pluses, and you can tag people, all those things add into how much extra you can have in a story versus you can have in the feed. In the feed, yes, you can put a location, but I don't find it as effective as you do on a story.
Yeah, and I mean, again, stories have their own place in the Instagram structure. And like you said, posting to Facebook, you know, it's a whole different game, and it goes back to consistency, as we were saying before. Instagram designs. The myth out there is that you need a lot of pro-grade software and a lot of training, and you maybe even need to hire professional photographers, videographers to make your Instagram feed stand out. I know that that's not true. You know that that's not true. So what are some budget-friendly tips in terms of editing, maybe making your pictures or videos look like $1 million and it won't break the bank either?
Yeah, so actually in our last webinar that I had hosted, we had talked about vintage logo, which is fairly inexpensive, so $2.99, and we also talked about Adobe Spark. I also had a lot of people reach out to me after that of saying how much they liked them. So I appreciate that you gave them a try. I think the best part about some of these apps is just being open-minded. They're not going to be super easy to use all the time, but just having the patience if you want to do some designs or some posts on a budget, that this is the best way to try and do it. So I have found a couple others. Canva is very popular within the cheerleading industry. It's a very more simple platform of your square posts, and you can put whatever text you want. My backside of Canva is that it's not always going to be exactly like your business. So the branding and the colors, and some of it can be really great. I've seen some really good posts, and sometimes it's just a bit off, but because it's not custom to your program, that's what you get for for free. And the other side of Canva, as well as the other apps I had mentioned prior, you can upload your logo, which I think is very, very important, and just an easy extra of having it make it look more like a business post. Again, with Canva, there are options that you can upgrade to different softwares and expensive options to have more backgrounds and colors and fonts and that kind of stuff. But if it is just for simple use, Canva is a really, really good way to go, and it's all set in an Instagram size, and it should be fairly easy to upload. The other one that I found is called Over, but it's actually Over Edit, and this one is really cool because it's not so much of custom texting, but it's more or less set posts. So I kind of played with it again the other day, and you can go in, there's a personal side and there's a business side, and you can choose which ones to work with. And they have more, I would say, logos done of different events. So Father's Day is coming up. They have 12 different options to use for Father's Day, and you can make it the color of your program and put the logo on it, and it's already done. So there's not so much of an option of just doing text, but they have different logos already done, which already look professional instead of typing it out yourself and hoping the text looks good. And they also help a little bit more with the colors and the layouts versus the other apps that we have talked about. So this one is my newer find, and I really, really like it. Again, there are options for free and there are options to upgrade, but the upgrades are fairly inexpensive. Like the first one I looked at was $2.99. So if you're willing to try and play with some of these different apps, you can get good results from them without trying to hire out. But again, there's never an option of saying, let's do this and do this. So I do think finding an app to play with would be great, and outreaching where other gyms may look to or other industries and kind of go with that.
Well, I think it's a couple of, really great recommendations in terms of apps. I've used them both as well, and to suit your needs, to suit different scenarios in terms of Instagram posts as well, they can be really, really powerful. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of important rules to remember. I don't know if we're going to spend a ton of time on each and every one, but I think it's really good just to go through these and let people know some of the do's and don'ts of Instagram posting. So Maria, take it away.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of explanations to be used. So say it's super easy and quick. Readable fonts. This is still something I see on a day-to-day platform. If you're going to use a light colored font, please don't put it on a light colored background. At the end of the day, whether you're a child or an adult, it's very hard to read. So be mindful, white on dark, dark on white. That's how it goes. Less is more, using more tactful words and engaging your parents. I find if you are marketing a lesson, be mindful of when it's okay to have a price on something and when maybe you don't need to have a price on something, and just have a call to action on where to register. Sometimes selling a feature, whether it be a tumbling lesson or whether it be a birthday party, sometimes a photo does more than just the words, and then you can have a simple logo or simple label for it. So less is more. Just keeping in mind, some posts may need to have a lot of text, and that again, it's okay. You do not want to do that all the time.
No.
So that's kind of my less is more action. Same thing goes for colors. And if you're using some of those Canva posts or using some of those pre-made posts that have a lot of glitz and stars and stuff all over it, you don't need that. Sometimes a plain colored box with your text and your logo can be just as effective, especially if it's just something small. So it just depends. Be wary of where you're using something that's busy and where you're using something that's simple.
Absolutely. And I just want to leap off of that for one quick second. I was having this conversation not long ago with somebody else, and less can be more in terms of design sometimes too, right? And you said it's like you don't have to try and do too much. You don't have to try and make this Instagram picture video have all of these artificial seeming pyrotechnics around it. Sometimes a simple to the point design is the best thing you can do.
Totally. And honestly, again, we've talked about this a couple times. Your interaction with an Instagram post is not very long. So if you want someone to actually be paying attention to it, it needs to be, to the point. Using your logo all the time, I still stand by this. I think it's the most important part of your brand, especially in a program and a sport that is still continuing to grow. I think if you have a strong logo, you need to be having at least a white version of it on your images. It doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be there. And I think that just adds the little stamp of approval that this is this gym, and it's consistent and it's always in their feed. And then you look up and you may see that logo another time and remember where it's from. So I do think your logo is just rememberable. So if you're putting it in more spots that is rememberable, then it's good for your business. Researching hashtags, this should be so easy. And it should be fun, actually. You should be finding hashtags for a couple different things. It should be about the sport. So seeing what hashtags are involved within cheerleading, whether it's stunts, whether it's fly, whether it's pyramids, any of those things should be included in most, if not all, your posts, as well as the area that you're in. So if we're here in Montreal, I would want to have a hashtag for Montreal. I would want to have a hashtag maybe for the area that we're in. It does work. So using those different hashtags, and a lot of cities actually have their own to base off of it as well. So that's important. And so using as many as you can. Instagram has a set, believe it's 30. So you can only use up to 30, but 30 is a lot. So if you're able to get that many and think about that, it's important to educate a little bit, just knowing that someone will click a hashtag and get led to a post. It does happen. A lot of people question that. It does happen. Photos, which we had talked about a little bit earlier, it still happens, these bad resolution photos. I think the majority of us are on really good phones now that take acceptable photos to use on different social media platforms. So be mindful that it's not a pixelated photo, but also be mindful that it's not a really dark photo. I do find that when the pictures don't look great, I'm not overly impressed, and just that ends up making you think that's what that whole feed is like. In a way, that's a really, a bigger way to say it, but I do see a value in having good photos and good content, and it should all follow through. Again, back to the word consistent. If I have a really, really good post that's professionally done or whichever, then my photo needs to follow the same thing. It cannot be this dark shadowed picture that someone took and doesn't look great. I've gotten to the point too that we only film horizontally. I will not film upright anymore, just because if we're using something for YouTube, I'm able to use that video for a lot of different things. So again, just keeping in mind of the value of how you take a picture or video is important. And then the last thing is consistency in colors. Obviously, your cheerleading gym is a brand, and again, you can have fun with different colors here and there. If there's pink and yellow because it's summertime, that's totally fine. But for the most part, I would say if you have 3 colors, to keep in a color scheme for most, if not all of your posts. Again, it just keeps that feed looking the same and consistent to your gym and your brand.
And I mean, great tips, great rules to follow. And from a content guy's perspective, just spend the extra 10 seconds and try and frame pictures and videos well. It'll pay off in the long run. So your story versus your feed, we've already touched on some of these, but I think we can revisit some of the details once again for people who aren't super familiar with stories. And the really important thing to remember too, right, is that, as you said, it's an additional way to connect with your audience. So, Are there any other sort of bigger overall things that people should be keeping in mind with stories in terms of strategy, in terms of how to post?
I would just make sure that that you're using your story. It shouldn't be an option. It should be something that's done all the time. And the story does not need to be the social posts that are in your feed. It absolutely can be, and it's extra to have. But content of things that are going on in your gym, programs, fun kids, all that stuff, utilizing your story is just an extra piece of marketing that showcases what's going on inside the program that you may not see on the feed. And of course, the fun part is that it's only up for 24 hours and then it resets itself the next day and you get to have fun with it again and again. So just think making sure that gyms are actually using it day by day.
I think being, budget smart has been a big part of what we've been talking about here today. But then there's also, you can cross over to the other side too, right? Which is being cheap. It's not a word that people like to hear in terms of their marketing push or how people are interacting with their brands. But the truth is, it still happens. People still make that mistake. So can you sort of maybe delineate the difference between budget smart and being cheap?
Yeah, so I think as we had mentioned prior, Instagram and social media is an intimidating tool if you're not using it properly or not used to using it really at all. So understanding how to make a strong feed also builds your business. And I do think that there are a lot of different programs out there that don't understand the connection between the building of a business and running social media, because I do think social media on some point has been more of a fun thing to do. But the reality is that it should be a platform for you to build business and have that engagement to your website and have that one person call you. That could just be one more person in the gym. That's one more person paying tuition. So I do think that there is a value of finding an agency, whether it be within the sport or whether it be outside, or a graphics person. They just have a different eye for graphics and marketing than the average person. And it doesn't go, you're never putting somebody down for trying in the different options of free, but remember that there are a handful of creative gurus that went to school for it because they just get it compared to the average person. And I do think remembering that that's a value in your business and your marketing, it's never a bad thing. So the amount of money that you may spend on somebody and hiring in and doing some custom work for your program should pay for itself, because if 2 kids or 1 child is new because they saw something on so-and-so or their friends shared it to them or I was tagged in that, then essentially it's well worth it. I do think as your business grows, it's the most valuable piece of your business is how you market. And I think it's a really great thing to see how marketing has grown. I do think when we're, look back in the days of 10 years ago when we were still relying on newspapers and doing radio and all sorts of different things, we have so many more platforms now that you don't really pay for. You don't pay to be on Instagram. There are certainly ways that you can spend money, but it makes it way easier to actually be budget friendly. So if you look at different companies that are able to sell, here's a package of X amount of social media posts, but you can use them within the whole year, that may be well worth it, knowing that you're able to just have a pocket full of different posts that are consistent from a designer and go well with your theme, but you don't have to pay someone to manage it. So there are just different ways to go about it. And I think the first step is don't be afraid to just go and ask. Go find an agency, go see what they do, go find another agency and weigh out the prices and weigh what your gym can market for. Maybe you take away from the budget you originally had for newspaper ads and say, maybe I do want to go on this more electronic route and try something different. I do think that is clearly where we're going as a whole in marketing and in general, and we're on our phones all the time, we're on laptops all the time. I think understanding that new step, and there's just a whole different generation that understands that side of marketing that's not the same as how we used to do it. So I do think just letting go of the fear a little bit, understanding you pay for what you get. So if you're going to do something for free, it's naturally going to be how it turns out when you make it. If you're paying somebody for a service, they're gonna do a service until you love it. And then I do think it opens other doors of learning how your business can look better. So I think I would end it on that note and just saying, make sure your business has a value to you and what you spend money on is so important, and marketing is like the biggest part. I do think that gets forgotten a lot, especially in the cheerleading industry. Without hurting any feelings, I do think it gets set aside, and I just want it not to be set aside anymore, and show people the importance of Instagram is such a small platform unless you make it big. And you should be making it big. I think as our sport grows, you're gonna grow. And so just that whole circle of,
I couldn't agree more. And, it ties all back to how Instagram is, such an important platform for people. And, folks listening right now and also in the recorded version afterwards can see this great recap, so many tools, so many things to use and learn. And as you said, also it's free. You don't necessarily have to pay an entry fee into Instagram, to any major social media platform still. So how much money you want to put into it, you could potentially see bigger returns.
Yeah.
But any point on our recap list that you want to just hit before we take questions?
No, I think just on our little list here and everything we've talked about, just remembering, A, don't be afraid to get your feet wet. B, if you're looking into doing different things, whether it be on Twitter and Snapchat and all our different platforms that are offered, you hit the nail on the head. They're all free. Try it. If you are feeling like as a manager, you're the only person part of that and you feel almost failing in a way that you're not keeping up with those things, I would say start to reach out on who else can be a contender in helping you. It doesn't mean that every single person needs to be on social media, but I do think having a team behind what you want to produce and put online is so important, and it cannot just be one person with every idea. And I'd also, on top of everything else, be outgoing. Think outside of the circle. It doesn't need to always be just cheerleading. It could be a really funny quote. It could be something from a completely different athlete that you put online. Shake it up a bit. Remember that in our sport of cheerleading, that we as coaches, for the most part, have all grown up within other sports, and we've found this niche. Mm-hmm. And we're still trying to captivate it and market it the right way to people that don't understand it. Mm-hmm. So being that creative and a little bit more mindful of what we put out there for our sport is so important. And just, I think my last words would be making sure that as we post for our sport and we're promoting something that we want to build and we want to see in the Olympics and have this grow to the ultimate success, we also need to be mindful of how we're marketing our sport. I think my biggest pet peeve is seeing people post videos of kids tumbling and hurting themselves and thinking it's funny. That doesn't promote our sport. So as a program, I would strongly advise the kids that are in broken or hurt or in knee braces, or there's a video of that, it's not something to promote. It's not how our sport grows. Big bruises, all of those things. I think there's better ways we can target our sport to being the fun and awesome activity that it has grown to be. So,
well, some really great points to end off with here. And again, I'll just echo it, positive vibes, positive imagery, thinking outside the box. It's a really just great marketing strategy overall. Before we get to questions, just want to remind everybody the recorded version of this webinar is coming your way via email early next week. So make sure you're looking in your inboxes, making sure that you keep tabs on that one so you can have a permanent copy. We are going to be taking questions momentarily, so in the text box on the right side of the screen, if you haven't entered questions so far, please do so. And of course, if you'd like more information about Amilia, what we offer, as well as how to start a free trial, we will be sending a link in that same email with the recorded webinar, or you can just go to Amilia.com. That's Amilia.com. I almost misspelled the name of my own company there. Okay, let's take some questions. We've got one here that says, you, meaning Maria, talked about both videos and photos. Do you have a recommendation of which work better, or a general idea of a recommended ratio of videos to photos? I think that's a really good thing to bring up, because I also was reading somewhere, and forgive me, I don't have the source in front of me, but that videos have become more popular on Instagram, but that does not mean that the good photo posts on Instagram are sort of dead in the water by any stretch.
No, it is a really great question. I think videos didn't have a place on Instagram. If we remember even a year or two ago, they were only 15 seconds long. So there wasn't very much engagement, and I think Instagram obviously learned that wasn't a really strong platform. So now videos are a minute long. That being said, I think videos are very successful as long as it's content that people want to watch. I do think if you have someone in your gym that can do a different highlight video, maybe you're getting ready to go to Worlds or you're going to Nationals, those type of things, people just engage more of having fun and watching the whole program. That being said, I do think showcasing new skills has been a really big breakthrough in our sport on Instagram. And again, it's that celebrating moment. So I do think that style of video does really well. But again, I do think an even set of both is valuable, and just making sure that it's filmed properly. You're not filming it on a dodgy camera or something of low grade. I also like to see that sometimes I do videos in black and white just to make it different. I don't know, I just find it just looks a little bit more different. You engage a little bit longer if it's a basket or it's a skill. Again, if you're going to do videos, it should be showcasing what the sport is about or what you're doing in practice, those type of things. I also think the boomerangs, which is an Instagram app itself, that also is quite big. And that's just fun and goofy stuff. That's not really anything of importance, but in the same breath, it is kind of important because you want to see those kids laughing and having a good time. So I, as a coach, love to go up to my kids and be like, go do a dance. I'm going to do a boomerang. And they're all like, are you putting it on Instagram? They all have fun with it. So I think making sure you have that even sense of video and photo, but also involving those that are in the video and photo.
Yeah, and as you said, the kids are going to get excited. They know they're going to be part of that Instagram ecosystem for your brand, your gym, your club. So they get excited about that too. We've got another question here that says, do you think this can help build a high school cheer program? So in terms of Instagram is maybe one of the major tools in relation to, schools. And I know that this is a really big even business in the United States especially. So how can Instagram help a high school cheer program?
Yeah, great question. I do think this entire webinar was definitely business-based, but as a high school program, again, there are tons of different high school teams all around. It is a little bit different because high school is not really a business. That being said, I do think having a team page is a good thing, but I don't know that you would be able to change a high school page into a business page, to be honest.
Okay.
That being said too, I do think if you're able to just, again, showcasing more sport, there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't know how much high traffic you're going to really get, but I would go back to the basics. Start following different cheerleading companies, get your name out there. Again, I do think if you are a high school team and you're near different clubs as well, maybe that's something you tag them in. But I would say high school cheer would just be a little bit more tricky. It's just not business based. So I'm not sure that would really be growing a business page, but building just a successful page doesn't necessarily need to be business page either.
Exactly. And we kept hitting on the fact that it's free to start up. You can just sort of experiment in the early going with, as you said, maybe 4 or 5 pictures a week, see how it goes, and then who knows what it could build into.
That's right.
We have time for one last question before we go, and this is sort of like a quantity versus quality type thing. So not in terms of content, but in terms of followers. Obviously, you've helped several of brands grow their following, huge numbers. People would love to have tens of thousands of people following them on Instagram. But is there sort of, on a smaller scale, a tact people can take where, it's about following the right people versus following like tons and tons and tons of people and not getting as much engagement? Yeah,
I think, it's interesting because Instagram can kind of go both ways, really. But I do find, if it's a smaller gym, I'll take an example. I work with a gym in Georgia, and they didn't really want help with the management side, and they didn't really want help with us tagging anything. They just wanted some custom posts. And so we made a little plan for them, and we just do 3 at random. They can tell us what they want in it, and it's scattered. And we don't really touch all of those other spectrums. They're more in charge of that. But what I've noticed, because their following, or who they follow rather, is mainly within their circumference of the athletes and the families, it has grown regardless, without the tagging side and without, they have been a little bit smarter with hashtags and watching that side of it grow. And I think just a little bit more education on how to actually market outside of their area. And so that's been interesting to watch because we really only make things pretty. We don't really touch anything else. We don't help with anything else because it's exactly what they wanted. And I think it gives both of us an opportunity to learn a little bit more, and just watching that theirs is more of a community. They definitely do some selling and marketing on their page, but it's way more of a community within their families. And that can be a great tool. That can be just what it is. It doesn't necessarily need to be, 15,000 people following your gym. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want it to be a closer knit group of people, and you keep it that way. I definitely see a different value now working with another gym like that and understanding why, and it's still grown. I think since we have started working with them, there's probably been about 300 extra followers tagged on there since we started, and again, just a different outlook on it. So I do think having more of a community base and having it smaller doesn't necessarily mean it's less in strength.
It's all about engaging that audience and keep them coming back for more. Well, Maria, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this webinar. So much amazing information and insight for everybody who has tuned in. Thanks for this.
Thank you so much.
Make sure you keep an eye on your inboxes for the full version of this webinar. Make sure you follow Maria on all of her social channels as well, doing some real live demos of what can work on Instagram. And for information on how we can help take your cheer club to the next level, make sure you visit Amilia.com.